"Talk to my deaf daughter," scoffed the arrogant Arab millionaire, until the black waiter shocked him. At that moment, at 8:47 p.m. on a Friday in August, at the Skyline restaurant in Manhattan, Hassan Al-Mansour, 44, CEO of Al-Mansour Enterprises, raised his voice loud enough for all 52 customers present to hear every word laden with contempt. He pointed to the 17-year-old girl sitting next to him, Nadia, his daughter who was born deaf, and then to Andre Thompson, 52, a black waiter who had worked there for 24 years. "If that waiter can have a real conversation with her, I'll give him $10,000 right now." Laughter erupted from the neighboring tables. Cell phones were instantly raised, capturing every second. Hassan smiled with the arrogance of someone who had never been contradicted. Nadia kept her head down, her face red with humiliation she knew all too well. Andre stood still, the tray of dishes balanced perfectly in his slightly trembling hands. Not from fear. From pent-up anger after decades of serving men like Hassan, men who looked through him as if he were furniture. "Sir, may I take your order?" Andre tried to keep his voice professional, but Hassan laughed louder. "Did you hear what I said? $10,000. All you have to do is talk to my daughter." He gestured to Nadia as if presenting a curious object in a museum. "But you can't, can you? Because she's deaf and you're just a waiter who barely finished high school." 3 Saudi investors sitting at the table joined in the laughter. All dressed in expensive suits, perfectly fitted white keffiyehs, watching the spectacle as if it were planned entertainment. What no one in that restaurant knew, what Hassan would never imagine in his arrogance fueled by generations of privilege, was that Andre Thompson had a story that began exactly 24 years ago, when he was 28 and had a completely different life. Before he was an invisible waiter, before he carried trays and cleaned tables, Andre had been an American Sign Language teacher at the Brooklyn School for the Deaf. He had spent 8 years teaching children like Nadia, building bridges between silent and noisy worlds. Until his younger brother, Marcus, was born deaf when Andre was 30. Until his mother fell ill and medical expenses consumed every penny he had saved. Until an impossible choice presented itself: continue teaching, earning $32,000 a year, or accept a job as a waiter in a luxury restaurant where tips alone brought in $60,000 a year. The choice was not difficult when Marcus needed hearing aids that cost $15,000 each, when his mother needed experimental treatments that insurance refused to cover. Andre left the classroom he loved, put on the uniform he hated, and spent 24 years being invisible to support the family he loved most in the world. 24 years serving men like Hassan, swallowing humiliation, smiling politely while being treated as less than human. And now, facing the daughter of that cruel man, he saw something in Nadia's eyes that he recognized immediately. It was the same expression Marcus had as a child, when other children laughed at him, when adults talked about him as if he weren't there, as if he couldn't understand. It was the absolute loneliness of someone who is treated as invisible in their own world. Andre carefully placed the tray on the sideboard. "Hassan, are you really going to try?" Another customer shouted, laughing. "I need to see this." More cell phones were raised. An elderly waiter trying to talk to a wealthy deaf woman. It would go viral in minutes. Andre took a deep breath, looked Nadia in the eyes for the first time, and then raised his hands. Fluid, precise movements, loaded with decades of experience. "Hi, Nadia. My name is Andre. Nice to meet you." Silence exploded in the restaurant like a bomb. Nadia's eyes widened, her mouth falling open in absolute shock. Her hands flew to respond, quick movements of someone who finally had someone who understood. You know sign language?" "How?" Hassan paled instantly. Laughter died as if someone had cut the sound. Investors looked at each other in confusion. Other customers put down their cutlery, watching the scene unfold as witnesses to something they didn't fully understand but knew was important. "I was an ASL teacher for 8 years, Andre replied in fluent signs, then translated aloud for the stunned audience. "I taught children like Nadia before working here. My younger brother was born deaf. I've spent half my life learning to build bridges between people the world insists on separating." Nadia began to cry. Not tears of sadness, but of pure relief from someone who had spent her entire life being talked about, never talked to. "No one ever," she signed quickly. "No one but paid interpreters ever learned to talk to me. Not even my own father." Andre looked at Hassan, who was now red not with amusement but with shame. "Your father asked us to talk," Andre said loudly enough for everyone to hear. "Then I'll do more than that. I'll have dinner with you, Nadia. I'll listen to everything you have to say. And I'll make sure your father understands every word. If you want to join me on this journey of how an invisible waiter taught the most expensive lesson to a millionaire who thought money could buy everything, subscribe to the channel. Because Hassan al-Mansour was about to discover that underestimating the wrong person didn't just cost $10,000. It cost something much more valuable that he was about to lose forever. Hassan remained paralyzed as Andre pulled up a chair and sat down next to Nadia. A simple movement, but one laden with meaning that made the entire restaurant hold its breath. Waiters don't sit with customers. Employees don't challenge their bosses. 52-year-old black men don't confront Arab millionaires surrounded by powerful allies. But Andre did just that. Nadia, Andre began signaling, ignoring Hassan completely. How old are you? 17, she replied, her hands still trembling with excitement. I'll be 18 in October. Are you in your last year of high school? She nodded. Do you have plans for college? Nadia's expression changed. It became darker, heavier. My father wants me to study business to work in his company. But I want to study art. Photography specifically. I want to capture moments that people don't normally see. Andre smiled. Deaf people often see the world in ways that hearing people cannot. Her perspective would be unique. That's what she always says, Hassan interrupted abruptly, his voice tense. But art isn't a real career. It doesn't pay the bills. Andre finally looked at him. With all due respect, sir, you weren't talking to your daughter. You were talking about her. There's a difference. Hassan stood up, his height intimidating. You work for me while you're in this restaurant. I pay your tip. No, Andre corrected calmly. You pay for food. Customers pay my tip. And technically, I'm not working right now. I'm having dinner with a new friend. The restaurant manager, Stephen Walsh, appeared suddenly. Andre, we need to talk. Now. Andre didn't move. Stephen, I've worked here for 28 years. I've never been late, never complained, always done everything I've been asked to do. I'm asking for 30 minutes to have dinner with this young woman. Just 30 minutes. Stephen looked at Hassan, then at the cell phone still filming, then at Nadia's expression, radiant with happiness for the first time that night. 30 minutes, he agreed reluctantly. But then get back to work. Andre nodded and turned his attention back to Nadia. Tell me about your photos. What do you like to capture? Over the next 20 minutes, Nadia spoke more than she had in months. She told him about a photography project documenting New York's deaf community, about how she wanted to show the beauty of sign language through images, about dreams she had never shared with her father because she knew they would be ridiculed. Andre listened attentively, asking questions that showed genuine interest, something she had never received before. Hassan watched with an increasingly troubled expression. He saw his daughter excited, expressive, alive in a way he had never witnessed before. And he realized, perhaps for the first time, how much he had lost by never learning her language. Investors began to rise uncomfortably. Maybe we should go, Hassan, one of them suggested. We can continue negotiations tomorrow. Hassan nodded distractedly, unable to take his eyes off the conversation between Andre and Nadia. When did you decide to become a photographer? Andre asked. When I was 13, Nadia replied. My mother gave me a camera before she died. She said I saw the world differently and should show that to others. Your mother passed away? I'm so sorry. She nodded, tears filling her eyes. 4 years ago. Cancer. She was the only one who really tried to talk to me. She learned sign language when she found out I was deaf. She spent years practicing to become fluent. After she was gone, I was alone. Andre gently touched her hand. You are not alone anymore. Hassan suddenly stood up, his chair scraping loudly across the floor. Enough, he said in a harsh voice. Nadia, we're leaving. But Dad, she started signing. Speak in English, Hassan ordered. You know I don't understand those hands. She wants to stay a little longer, Andre translated calmly. She wants to finish telling me about her photography project. I didn't ask what she wants, Hassan exploded. I'm her father. I decide when we leave. Andre stood up slowly, meeting Hassan's eyes. Mr. Al-Mansour, may I ask a question? Hassan crossed his arms defensively. What? Why did you never learn sign language? The question hit like a bomb. Hassan opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. I didn't have time. I run a global company. I travel constantly. It's too busy, Andre said calmly. But you had time for business dinners. For golf with investors. For trips your daughter can't accompany you on because you can't communicate with her in public without an interpreter. Hassan turned red. You don't know anything about my life. I know enough, Andre replied. Because I've been through something similar. My brother Marcus was born deaf when I was 30. I was a teacher then, but not of sign language. I taught history. When Marcus was born, I dropped everything for a year to learn ASL fluently. Because family isn't about convenience. It's about sacrifice. Hassan looked at Nadia, who was watching the conversation with an expression between hope and pain. You think I'm a bad father. I think you're a scared father, Andre corrected. Scared that not knowing how to communicate with your daughter means you've already lost her. But there's still time. There's always time. Hassan looked at his hands, which had never learned to speak to his daughter. Then at Nadia, who waited with bated breath. Finally, in a broken voice that no one in the restaurant had ever heard from him, he asked, How do I say sorry? Andre signaled slowly, with clear movements. Hassan tried to copy him, his hands trembling and clumsy. Nadia covered her mouth, tears streaming down her face. They weren't perfect signs, but they were the first real effort her father had made in 17 years. She raised her own hands. I love you, Dad. I've always loved you. Even when you ignored me. Andre translated each word aloud. Hassan collapsed in his chair, his face in his hands. The restaurant was completely silent, witnessing the breakdown of a man who minutes before had exuded arrogance. I didn't know, he whispered. Your mother took care of everything. After she died, I couldn't look at you without seeing her. Without remembering that I failed to save her. Nadia made frantic gestures. Andre translated, his voice gentle but firm. She says you didn't fail her mother. Cancer failed. Fate failed. But you are failing her now by letting fear prevent you from getting to know her. Hassan looked at his daughter as if seeing her for the first time. I want to learn, he said directly to her, even though he knew she didn't understand his words. I want to really get to know you. Andre began signing, translating, but Nadia interrupted him. She pointed to her own lips, then to Hassan. She had learned to read lips, though her father never knew because he had never tried to talk to her face to face. She understood. Hassan hesitantly reached out his hand. Nadia took it, and for the first time in 4 years since her mother's death, father and daughter truly embraced. Stephen Walsh approached the table, looking tense. Andre, a customer is complaining about the food at table 12. I need you to, Hassan interrupted him, standing up. How much does Andre earn per year here? Stephen looked confused. That's confidential. I'll pay you double, Hassan said. I want to hire you as a private interpreter and sign language tutor. Full-time. Andre shook his head. Sir, I appreciate the offer, but I don't need charity. It's not charity, Hassan insisted. It's necessity. You have something I can't buy. Experience. Patience. And most importantly, respect for my daughter as a person, not as a problem to be managed. Nadia signaled to Andre. She's asking you to accept, Andre translated for Hassan. She says you need help and she needs an ally. Andre looked between father and daughter. 28 years in this restaurant. 28 years of being invisible, of being less than human to people who never bothered to get to know him. And now an opportunity to do what he loved again, to teach, to build bridges. All right, he agreed. But on certain conditions. Hassan nodded. What are they? First, you don't hire an interpreter for Nadia. You learn sign language. I'll teach you. Second, you support her dream of becoming a photographer. Enrollment in art school, equipment, everything she needs. Third, you fund a scholarship program for deaf students from underprivileged communities. Because your daughter had the privilege of resources. Many do not. Hassan took a deep breath. Done. All of it. How much do you need for the scholarship program? Andre wasn't expecting that. $100,000 would cover 20 students per year. I'll donate $500,000, Hassan said. 100 students. And you run the program. You choose who gets the funds. The restaurant erupted in applause. Customers who had witnessed the initial humiliation now saw redemption. Cell phones were still filming, but now they were capturing something different. Not humiliation, but humanity. Stephen Walsh approached again. Andre, about your job here. Hassan cut him off. He just resigned. I'll cover any loss of salary during the transition. Andre looked around the restaurant. 28 years waiting tables, 28 years invisible. Colleague Maria in the kitchen, who had been working for 15 years. Thomas at the entrance, 412. All invisible, all underestimated. Mr. Hassan, Andre said carefully. I accept your job. But I want to bring 2 more teachers with me. Old colleagues from the school for the deaf who also left due to financial necessity. We want to create a complete teaching program, not just for you, but for other families. Hired, Hassan agreed immediately. Nadia took out her cell phone and showed it to Andre. It was her photography portfolio. Images of New York's deaf community, moments captured with sensitivity and breathtaking beauty. People talking in sign language in cafes, deaf children laughing on the playground, elderly people teaching young people old signs. Each photo told a story. Hassan looked over his shoulder, seeing for the first time the talent he had ignored. She's amazing, Hassan whispered, his voice full of admiration and regret. She always has been, Andre replied. You just never stopped to look. I'll spend the rest of my life making up for that, Hassan promised, this time looking directly at Nadia and making the clumsy signs Andre had taught him. I promise. 6 months later, Andre was on stage at the Brooklyn Community Center, watching an audience of 200 people. Half were conversing in sign language, half in spoken English, but they all shared the same purpose. Hassan sat in the front row, now able to hold basic conversations in ASL after intensive classes 4 times a week. Nadia was beside him, camera on her lap, smile that hadn't faded since that night at Skyline. At 18, she had just won a full scholarship to the School of Visual Arts. Her portfolio had impressed the admissions committee so much that they also offered her a teaching assistant position. Andre adjusted the microphone. Today we are launching the Ponte de Voces Scholarship Program, funded by Hassan Al-Mansour and administered by 3 teachers who have returned to what they love to do. Maria was there, a former Skyline cook who turned out to be a certified interpreter who had abandoned her profession because of low pay. Thomas, a former receptionist, was actually an ASL teacher with a master's degree. Together, over the past 6 months, we have prepared a program that will award 100 scholarships annually to deaf students from low-income families. It will cover tuition, materials, assistive technology, and private sign language lessons for family members. Hassan stood up to speak, now signing as he spoke to the mixed audience. 6 months ago, I was the most foolish man in New York. I had everything money could buy, but I had no connection with the most important person in my life. My daughter spent 17 years feeling invisible in her own home while I wasted time on business deals I will forget, meetings that don't matter, earning money that did not bring happiness. His voice broke. I took a restaurant waiter to teach me what a father should know. That no business meeting is more important than learning to say goodnight to your daughter. That no contract is worth more than listening to her dreams, even if that listening happens through hands instead of ears. Nadia joined him on stage. She began signing, and Hassan translated, their roles now reversed. For years I thought there was something wrong with me. That being deaf made me less valuable, less deserving of my father's attention. But Andre taught me that there is nothing wrong with me. The problem was a world that refused to learn my language. My father changed. Not perfectly, not without effort, but he really changed. Now we have real conversations. He knows my friends. He attended my last photo presentation. For the first time, I have a real father. And that is worth more than any amount of money he could give me. Marcus, Andre's brother, now 24, took the stage. He was a doctoral student in linguistics at Columbia, specializing in sign languages. My brother sacrificed a career he loved to give me the life I deserve. He signed while an interpreter translated. He worked as a waiter for 24 years to pay for my hearing aids, my special education, therapies that insurance didn't cover. He is the reason I am here today, about to defend my thesis on the preservation of regional sign languages. And he never complained, never made me feel like I was a burden. That is the definition of love. Andre hugged his brother, both with tears in their eyes. Stephen Walsh, former manager of Skyline, was at the back of the room. He had come in person to apologize for years of looking through Andre instead of seeing him. He had offered to create a program at the restaurant where employees could pursue education while working, inspired by the story. A small but significant change. The customer who had filmed the initial confrontation was there too. His video had gone viral with 23 million views, but not as cruel entertainment. As a lesson about underestimating people based on appearances, about the power of getting to know someone before judging them. Hassan approached Andre after the ceremony. "I have a final proposal," he said, making signs as he spoke, a habit he had developed. "I want you to be the permanent director of this program. A salary of $150,000 a year, full benefits for you and Marcus, an unlimited budget to expand the initiative." Andre smiled. "You know you don't have to pay me that much." "I know I don't have to," Hassan replied. "But you're worth that and more. You've spent your career being undervalued. It's time for the world to recognize your true worth." Andre accepted with a handshake that turned into a hug. Nadia showed a new series of photos. She had documented her father's transformation over the past 6 months. The first photo showed Hassan with his hands in his pockets, distant. The last one showed him and Nadia laughing together, their hands flying in lively conversation. "This one is going to be exhibited at school," she signaled. "It will be called Learning to See. It's about how my father finally learned to really see me." Hassan looked at the photos with a mixture of pride and remorse. "I could have done this 17 years ago. I could have learned when she was born. I wasted so much time. But you haven't wasted today," Andre reminded him. "And you won't waste tomorrow. That's what matters." At the end of the evening, Andre stood alone on the empty stage for a moment. He thought about 28 years of carrying trays, about customers who looked right through him, about dreams that had been postponed but not abandoned. He thought about little Marcus, learning to navigate a world that wasn't built for him. He thought about Nadia, who now had a father present and a bright future. And he thought about the 100 students per year who would have opportunities they wouldn't otherwise have. His mother, who had passed away 2 years earlier at the age of 81, would have been so proud. She always said that sacrifice made with love is never wasted. It just plants seeds that bloom when you least expect it. If this story touched you, if you believe that everyone deserves to be seen and heard regardless of how they communicate, if you understand that a person's true value lies not in their position but in their character, subscribe to the channel. Because Andre Thompson proved that an invisible waiter can teach a more valuable lesson to a millionaire who thought he knew everything. The most important language anyone can learn is not English, Arabic, or Mandarin. It is the language of empathy, humility, and the genuine effort to get to know someone beyond superficial assumptions. Hassan al-Mansour walked into that restaurant thinking that money could buy everything. He left understanding that the only thing that really mattered was the connection he had almost lost forever with the daughter he loved but never learned to know. And everything changed because a man whom the world treated as invisible refused to let a 17-year-old girl feel the same way.